Thank you, sir.
Any liquids on you, make sure no water, no drinks. All the liquids wash to the clear bags, please. Any sanitizer, toiletries, perfume, toothpaste. Make sure no water and no drinks with you, please.
Films are made through the reflection of a mirror that you hold up to the world. Sometimes it reflects yourself, or a version of yourself. Sometimes it reflects time, like a portal to the past or a window into the future, depending on how you look through it. But it's a mirror that can shatter. It gets hard to know whether or not what you are looking at is actually the truth. Just because it looks like it through one piece doesn't mean that it can't look like something else entirely in another. I was searching for the fragment that captured what I was going through honestly, and that can change. That's got to change. It was a song yesterday. It's a film today. It might be a painting tomorrow. I really don't think we are as in control of this thing as we would like to think we are. I think it takes you where it wants to take you. And I didn't see any reason why I shouldn't go along with it. I thought at the very least, it would be an adventure. Well, I guess I'll begin then where I never really ended. London, the city I came of age in. I had no way of knowing what was coming, but I was ready for it.
Welcome to London.
I love you.
I love you too.
There are moments in life when you feel you are at the place where you most belong. Those first few months in London were like that.
Oh, please, say to me, let me be your man.
We made it feel like home.
Please, say to me,
We lived in a small studio in an old candy factory near the Thames. It wasn't much, but there was a romanticism about it, a sense of becoming. There was no plumbing in the room, so the water from the sink just ran out into a bucket that I would dump out the window. There were communal bathrooms at the end of the hall and showers on the other side of the building, but you never really knew what you were walking into. The shower situation came up free. We lived outside the law there. It was like stepping into a bygone era. We were happy. Oh, cute. As the winter stretched on, though, the armor of our romantic illusions about the place had started to wear thin. The ugliness around us had become puncturing. We were up close to a rotating cast of drifters, junkies, and misfits. There was mold in our room, and we were getting sick a lot. There was a desperation that hung in the air. I don't think I felt the distance of where I was and where I wanted to be as clearly as I did then. It was a long winter.
Off to Paris? Trip 1.
We got out of the city when we could. France became a respite for us. I loved Paris. It was like a city constructed in my imagination. It filled in me something that I didn't even know was missing. We spent the days more or less getting lost, retracing the steps of the dead, paying our respects, and finding sacred places of our own, in our own time.
I'm in love with that girl.
On the second trip to France, we stayed in a quiet little village outside of Paris.
Ready? Done.
I liked the rhythm of life there. It was a good place to write. I could have gotten used to it, but I was restless. On our last day, I was lying in Rodin's garden writing postcards to send back to a home I felt increasingly far away from, feeling at once on the cusp of something and 1,000 miles away. I was in that sensitive, seeking state you're in when looking for your next project.
The site of the Subterranean Homesick Blues music video. Incredible.
I could feel a change coming, but I knew I wasn't where I needed to be to make it. I figured if it was meant to be, the wind would blow me in that direction. My visa in England was nearing its end, and I had a month or so before I could get to Europe again. It was hard to leave London. There was more of that city yet to discover, dreams yet to live, and I left my heart there.
Come over to the window, my little darling.
You said your goodbyes, little one.
I'd like to try to read your palm. I used to think I was some kind of gypsy boy before I let you take me home. Oh, so long, Marianne, time we began to laugh and cry and cry and laugh about it all.
As soon as I was in America, all I wanted to do was get back to Europe. I was living two very different lives, and they were hard to reconcile. One lived for love, and the other for ambition.
This is the longest I've ever been away from the studio.
I was making progress on a new series of short films, rebuilding my old studio and writing, but this would turn out to be a season of false starts and scrapped ideas.
Notes with attachments, opening credits, slide test. Take one. Okay.
Part of me felt like maybe I was letting on too much, while the other part of me was saying maybe I wasn't letting on enough. I couldn't strike a balance, so I shelved it. I wanted to make images that were true to what I was seeing with my own eyes, a visual record of what I was going through, the feeling of a life lived in transit, of seeking new inspiration and experience, the feeling of being in love.
Waiting for a girl.
I liked life on the road, the constant motion, the constant stimulation. I was soaking everything up like a sponge.
Baby, now let me hold you tight, my love. It's not easy. I want to hold you every day so that I can fall in your love arms. It's not easy.
Travel cooled the restlessness that was burning in me. If I was running from something, I didn't know it then. It's easy to give yourself over to self-mythology with this way of living, especially when from the outside it looks like you have the life you have always wanted. It was an image we both had a hand in making. But the creation of that fantasy, however true in fragments, is bound to meet up with reality sooner or later. We had unresolved problems from the very beginning. You can forget that all it takes for that life to unravel is pulling at the wrong thread.
in between the gaps of the stars. We lay in the dark.
There was some stuff that we hadn't worked out that we probably should have worked out before the summer. We were traveling light, but we carried inside ourselves a heaviness that we couldn't shake.
Is a grave in a field far away.
In Italy, we rented a room for a month above the kitchen of a restaurant. We'd imagined it being a secluded place for us to work, but it pretty quickly turned into something much more. We helped out when they needed extra hands in the kitchen and during harvest, then picked up little projects here and there. It was soul-giving to participate in a community that felt larger than just the two of us.
They won't understand. Timing out, butterfly.
Italy was the closest I've come to a kind of paradise.
Butterflies.
But I strayed from its garden. My relationship was coming unspooled in my hands, and I just couldn't get a hold of it. I had lost grip of my muse and my vocation, or else I had squeezed her too tight.
So close and yet so far away.
And at that point, I really wasn't so sure how much of this life I was building across the world was going to last.
Said today, perhaps until tomorrow. Your fears have built a wall between our lives and all that loving means. We'll have to go unfelt, it seems, and that leaves only sorrow. You built your tower strong and tall. Can't you see it's got to fall someday?
It never got any easier to say goodbye. Back in the States, I felt hounded by ghosts. Dreams I'd lived, dreams I'd lost, promises that I'd made that I was fighting to keep. To her, to myself, to the kind of artist I felt I needed to become. There was something cyclical about the end of summer. I found myself back in Los Angeles, the city where I had fallen in love a year earlier. I went back to the spot where it felt like the chapter of my life I had spent the last year living had begun, that now, standing there again, was coming to an end, separated by a year and a day. Ready?
Yes.
3,
2,
2, 1,
go. And there it goes. Out loud.
all the way from Dublin to the shores of Los Angeles. Anything for the future?
For the future, always believe in love. That's what I say.
Yes, always believe in love. Seconded.
And what about you?
I hope the next 3 weeks are the longest you have to be apart.
I love you.
I love you.
Out on the sea, we'd be forgiven.
I decided I was going to make a film about the last year. It would follow the events of my relationship, from throwing the shell into the ocean to returning alone a year later. I was fitting the pieces of my life back together by making this film. It felt like an act of spiritual survival.
Somebody's child, nobody made you.
How can you be so nice to me?
'Cause now what you stole is what they gave you. In all route you go, in your silence, your soul.
How was that? Hold on tight.
I'd been holed up in my studio for a month straight. I was emotionally strung out, and the pace I was working hadn't allowed me to heal like I thought it would. I needed a hard break from it all, so I went to New York to see my friends and clear my head.
Would you rather go and wheel it? The heart is full, now it's spilling.
When I got back, I started the script from scratch. I wrote the film in 2 weeks and spent the next month and a half shooting studio scenes. By then I knew it was going to be a feature. There was just too much story to tell to fit it into the kind of short film I had grown up making. What I didn't know at the time, or else what I was just telling myself I didn't know at the time, was that I was too close to what I was going through to translate it into art. And I think by the end of it I was just tired of myself. If I could call a person on screen myself, I couldn't relate to that person anymore. To make films about your own life is to embody a kind of illusion until it becomes real, to live in a dream. And when you are under that spell, there is nothing more lovely, but it is a dream you wake up from, and it can make real life seem anathema in one way or another. As far as that film goes, it was just too personal to put out into the world. It was for an audience of one. I made it for her, for us. I think that film was really me working out how I felt about my relationship. Would I do it all again? I really can't say. I would go about it differently, although I'm not so sure how clear-headed anyone can be when they're in love. The new year, a fresh start. I was glad to be back in London. I wanted another go at that city. We moved out of the old studio and got a new place, and I spent the first part of the year building it out.
I'm changing down the gears.
I don't think I realized just how much I had missed it until I was back there again.
I'm slamming on the brakes.
I felt a greater sense of belonging than I did the first time.
From the 60s.
I still needed that city thing, you know, having interesting people and exciting things happening around you constantly. I was continuing my education in life.
Very nice little one.
Good?
Yeah, beautiful.
When I first met Van Neistat, it was like coming face to face with a prophet from the Old Testament, and I still feel that way to this day. So when our schedules lined up again and it looked like we could get the band back together, I headed down to LA. I think our philosophies about life and art were sort of running parallel to each other, more or less the same way. That Neistat recognized in me where I was coming from and where I am going was sort of all the validation I needed to press on in my own direction. The change I had felt in London, in California, I was able to act on. I was in striking distance of being able to consciously transmit what it was that was coming to me from an unconscious place, written and spoken in my own words. I was writing them as they came to me and moving on. It was like starting all over, but in the best way. It felt like it was the first stuff I'd ever really written. You know, I just forgot about everything else. I don't want to say it came easy, but it wasn't the trench warfare I was used to. The canvas had turned on its side, so to speak, and I had something I needed to say, and I thought this medium was the best way to go about saying it. I haven't really stuck around for more than a few months in any one place for the last 2 years. I've gotten used to living life out of a suitcase. In the land of the living, it's keeping on the road that counts, and I know I am where I belong for now. I am ready to go anywhere.
Thank you. Shall I make a wish?
Yes, make a wish. Ooh, all of them.
You think it'll come true?
Yes, whatever you wished for.
There's an Odyssey-like quality to it. I mean, that's what it feels like. I was looking for a home, seeking one, making one, missing one, trying to find my way back to one I had lost somewhere. But it's always changing, kind of like life. So who am I to come along and pretend I've got an explanation for any of it? I'm just a storyteller. Life isn't about getting to one place and staying there. Life is a mystery that the act of creation only ever deepens. I think it's better kept that way. You set out into the world to make things and learn about yourself as you go along. That's the deal. You come to understand that every point of arrival is only ever just another point of departure. There's really no telling where you might end up next.